What's up, guys? It's your boy Zowoki back out with some more of the Chris Watts and Nicole Ketchinger's videos, and with Unapologetically Me True Crime posting a video almost a day to 2 days. We are dialing into pretty much the chunk of Chris Watts' time alone at Cervi 319, which I love looking at this because it just shows how much time that we think that one person can do in that short of time is actually possibly two people, because it makes it even better. And we're going to look at that right now with the channel Unapologetically Me True Crime. Grab a chair, grab some, or not grab some popcorn, but get comfortable. And also don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel by hitting that wiper icon down at the bottom right. Hit that bell icon next to it, so when I do post videos like this one, you guys will get that little ring notification that I've posted that video, and then you guys can watch, comment, like, and share. And again, I'm so thankful for all of you guys. We just hit 62K, and it's because of you guys that this channel is what came from nothing. And I thank you guys so very much. Bring that love over to Unapologetically Me True Crime. Go give her some love by subscribing, commenting, liking, and sharing. And I want to make this very disclaimer that if you guys do not want to see this right here, you can go in the link in the description and go to her channel and watch it. You don't have to watch the video. If you don't want me, the link is in the description. Head over to her channel, give her some love. Like I just said, that's all you have to do. So, you know who the people are, the ones that are saying that. So, let's get in the video and see what more we can dive into this hole. Love her intro. Like watching a movie. Oh, that's what Nicole did to Chris right there. Just her. I hope one of these days we can work together. She's in Chicago?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is that you are tuning in. This is Unapologetically Me, featuring me. No special guest, just me. How are you guys doing today? I hope you guys are all having a great day, a great week, a great weekend, whatever time it is that you are clicking on this video. If you are new here, welcome. Thank you so much for taking a chance on someone else's perspective on this case. Hopefully you will find something that you enjoy about either my presentation, or you learn something from this video and you decide to stick around and subscribe. To my current subscribers, thank you so much for your support. You have no idea how much you all mean to me. If you are not yet subscribed, I would love it if you considered subscribing. I have noticed that a percentage of you who come back on a regular basis to watch my videos are not actually subscribed. Yeah. So what gives? Just hit the button. It's not that hard. And it costs no money. Just kidding. I'm not being an asshole here. For everyone who is commenting, please know that your comments mean everything to me. Your likes mean everything to me. I can't necessarily thank all of you individually, but I do want you all to know that every single like, share, comment, and subscription mean the world to me. So thank you so like a personal hug. Much. Again, for those of you who are new here, hopefully you will find that I'm your cup of tea. And if not, that's okay too, because you have the ability to click out of here at any point. Exactly. No hard feelings on my end. Please feel free to comment. Just remember to keep it classy. Everybody has their own opinion and they're entitled to it. So far, I think we've been doing a great job at keeping the comment section a safe space to share that opinion without people getting too insulting. You can say your opinion without insults, okay? That's just not gonna fly here, all right? So just know that you're wasting your time. So now with all of that out of the way, let's
like
get
this
into
woman.
today's video. I hope you guys are having a great holiday season. Christmas is coming, it's getting insane, and I really wanted to at least get one video out this month. So this video is going to be an analysis video. It is going to be about the 85 minutes that Chris was at.
But if you shrink it down to be actually how he was out there, it's 39 minutes.
Cervi 319 alone, allegedly. We're going to be deciding to the best of our ability whether or not Chris would have been able to carry out all of the actions he alleges he made at Cervi 319 all on his own. No help, guidance, or assistance from anyone. Now, we know how long Chris was there at Cervi 319 according to his APC work truck's geotab. And we know when the other members of his work team arrived due to their geotabs. We also have Chris's steps made, as well as whether or not there were any flights of stairs climbed, both of which are significant. We know where about Chris parked when he arrived to Cervi 319, both according to his geotab and others that arrived there later on. And so what we are doing in this video is looking at the distance from Chris's truck to the burial site of Shanann and the distance of his truck from the oil tanks that he put his daughters in. How many steps would be made if someone were to reenact exactly what Chris said he did that morning all by himself? We are obviously going to take the time into consideration as well. Chris was alone at Cervi 319 for approximately 85 minutes, and when Chad and Melissa arrived, Chris was allegedly standing with a shovel, digging a small hole next to this oil leak. Something else we're going to be taking into consideration is the amount of phone calls and text messages that Chris was receiving and replying.
But you know who he was not texting? He was not texting Nicole. The only day that they had not been texting in over how many different weeks to months, this is the first day that they don't talk. That doesn't raise red flags right there?
Applying to, because as you will notice, these are pretty much non-stop throughout those 85 minutes. There are only short breaks of time in between that Chris was not on the phone or replying to text messages. Now, I told you guys in the last video that without analyzing anything yet, that I believed that it was possible for Chris to have done this in 85 minutes on his own with time to spare. What do you think?
And not looking sweaty.
Now, before we look into any data, what is your opinion? Was 85 minutes enough time?
Nope.
That's roughly an hour and a half. Now, I've always looked at this a certain way. You know how when someone's telling you a story and you're picturing it in your mind a certain way, like what it would look like. So I've been assuming that because of the steps taken at Cervi 319 and the order of the amount of steps, that he buried Shanann before putting the girls in the oil tanks.
Yes.
And I didn't really think of that consciously, but subconsciously, I guess that's what I've been thinking. Why?
I thought when he got there, he had first murdered Bella, and then he murdered, or Cece, then Bella, and then after he had put them in the tanks, then he buried Shanann. Just because I wouldn't think that the girls would want to see their mom being buried. That's a weird way to look at it, but there's two different sides of it. That he either buried Shanann first or murdered the girls first. What do you guys think?
Because when Chris first arrived to Cervi, he had 410 steps recorded right away. Then later on, he made 760 steps. Considering where he parked and where he disposed of the bodies, my mind just figured that since the burial site was less steps away from the truck, he must have buried Shanann before taking the girls to the tanks. But it doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? And if you go off of the order of what Chris says, he says he got to Cervi, he took Cece's life, he walked her up to the first tank, and he dropped her in. Then he did the same to Bella, though Bella put up a fight and was harder to fit through the thief hatch of the oil tank. So this may have taken a little bit longer than Cece. And then he buried Shanann. And that would make
sense. Uh-oh. what's happening to the thing.
Make more sense, right, for him to do it that way, because if not, they would have had to watch their father bury their mother and
See,
likely
that's
would
messed
have
up even
sadly
more.
just been in Chris's way. What doesn't make sense to me is Chris's steps. So let's look at those first.
Yes.
Chris arrives at Cervi 319 at 6:53 and 57 seconds a.m., but we're just going to go with 6:53 a.m. He parks here, and his truck doesn't move from this location until he leaves for Cervi 1029 later on. Troy McCoy confirms that Chris was parked here. He even draws this box with headlights to show the exact direction that Chris's truck was facing. Now, Cervi 319 was demolished back in 2020 or 2021. I can't remember which it is.
In
I'm
December
sorry.
instead
So
of September.
I can only go off of old photos, and I can't be completely accurate with any of this, but I did want to try for the sake of seeing if it was possible. Okay? All measurements are approximate. So if Chris Watt's truck was parked about here and the tanks are way over here, how many approximate steps away was the truck from the tanks? Okay, so this is math, and I hate math. I'm also a self-proclaimed idiot with math. So again, my disclaimer for all measurements being approximate. Feel free to do this on your own in a much better way than I have. I dare you. It's been rough, okay?
It has.
So, Cervi 319 was said to be about 3 or 4 acres in total. I tried to find better measurements of the actual well site, but this is from Discovery and it doesn't say what the measurements are of the actual area that you can drive on. The area free of vegetation where just the tanks and the pump and those things.
What you could do is go off the see what kind of car they have. They have, it looks like a Ford Escape. So what they could do is just see how long this vehicle is and then kind of just guesstimate approximately how many feet from the dimensions of this vehicle, and then just use that as measurement. That's what I use.
Basically the brown area. Okay. Well, I'm sure I could figure it out. I'm not going to spend hours doing that. I'm just going to be guesstimating. So at 7 a.m., Chris's phone logged 410 steps. And at 8 a.m., Chris's phone logged 760 steps. These were both on his work phone. Let's figure out the 410 steps first, or at least try to. Again, this is all me estimating, guesstimating, whatever you want to call it. I had to pick a number and I had to stick with it. Okay, so these numbers could be off, but I think in the grand scheme of things, I'm close enough that we would be able to at least answer the questions that this video is supposed to figure out, is whether or not he made enough steps, whether or not he had enough time to do these things on his own. Okay, just bear with me. So I figured that the distance from the truck to tank 1 was maybe about 40 meters. Now, it could have been more, it could have been 50. I actually did the math for it being 40 meters, 45 meters, and 50 meters, because I don't really see it being farther than 50. But we're going to go on 40 meters right now, okay?
Okay.
The distance from the truck to tank 2 was maybe about 41, 42 meters. If you look between the thief hatches, there's maybe 2 meters in between, maybe 3, I don't know. Again, I had to pick a number and I had to stick with it. So what I stuck with was 40 meters and 41 meters. 40 meters is equal to about 131 feet. So from Chris's truck to tank 1 was 131 feet, according to my data. I'm not going to keep repeating this, but I feel like sometimes I have to, because people will pick this shit apart in the comment section. It's like, how many times did I tell you? I'm not a freaking math whiz, all right? I am just trying to do this. Feel free to do the math on your own and prove me wrong. I mean, if I'm wrong, I'd like to know. We're just trying to figure out 2 things, and that's what we're going to do in this video. I'm so sorry. You can hear my 4-year-old. She's not alone. She is downstairs with her father, but you can hear her screaming. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to edit that out, but if you can hear that throughout the video, she's playing, all right? She's not in any kind of distress. All right. The distance from the truck to tank 2 was maybe about 41 meters. 41 meters is equal to about 134 feet.
Twice.
Now, if we add those numbers together, we get 265 feet. Multiply that by 2, and we have a total of 530 feet. So for him to go to the tank once with Bella and once with Cece, that would add up to be 265 feet. For him to come back both times, we would have a total of 530 feet. Now here's the thing, 1 foot is not equal to 1 step. Step length is the distance between the front and back foot when walking. The average step length for women is 2.2 feet, and for men it is 2.5 feet. But it does depend on height, as well as stride, and a few other things go into this. So as you can tell, there's a lot that goes into this when we think of measuring the exact amount of steps that Chris should have or should not have taken. So now we have to do a little bit more math, because 1 step for Chris Watts is probably closer to 2.5 feet. That's the number I chose. That's the number I'm going with. Chris was 5'10", which is about average height for an adult male. So we're going to use the 2.5 foot measurement for this analysis. Okay, so what do we need to do first? We need to take 530 feet and divide it by 2.5. That is only 212 steps. But then multiply that by 2 and you get 424. So he made 410. I'm getting 424. That would mean that he went to and from the tanks more than once. Maybe to open the hatches to where they could release the pressure, but not be open for too long. And that would be 424 steps. So approximately 424 steps for Chris to go up to the east tank, open the hatch, come down, get Cece, complete the despicable task of putting her through the hatch and dropping her into the oil, and then doing the same thing to Bella, going up to the west tank, opening the thief hatch, coming back down and getting Bella, taking her up, and again doing the same thing he did to Cece. Chris's health app logged 410 steps. 424 steps is very close. So I would say that would seem to add up. Later on in my analysis, I realized that I'm driving myself insane for no reason, because there is virtually no way to figure this out. And I feel stupid thinking that I could even try, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to keep going with what I figured out, because I did come to a conclusion of opinion at least, and it was not at all what I was expecting. This is where I need to point out that Chris was wearing his Apple Watch. Yep. I don't know how many of you have an Apple Watch and use it to track steps, but it does record your steps to your health app. I have an Apple Watch, and something that I've noticed is that it counts steps with hand and arm movements, even if you're sitting down. It's the reason that you're supposed to wear it on your non-dominant hand. But even on your non-dominant hand, if you're lifting something up high or making any quick, repetitive movements with your arm, like digging a hole, let's say, for example, it can log those movements as steps. I talk a lot with my hands. I've noticed that after making a video, I log steps, and it's impossible because I'm sitting down while recording this, but I am waving and flailing my hands all over hell while I'm doing it, and I am logging steps. Like, I will have steps on my watch that show up on my health app. Like, I just took a walk, but I'm sitting here. Okay. And to the contrary, I've also noticed that when I go to the grocery store or I'm pushing a cart, or if I take my little one on a walk in her stroller, if my left arm isn't down swinging, a lot of my steps don't record, like, at all. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind. And like I said just a little bit ago, there really is no way to be able to accurately figure out if 410 actual steps were made by Chris. And that's because his arm movements would have likely been recording as steps too. But this is exactly
that's why I was just wondering. I was like, what if his shovel movement was counting as steps plus him walking steps? It doesn't add up.
I find it interesting that the number that I got was pretty close to what his steps recorded. And it just makes me a little bit more comfortable saying that my measurements were at least somewhat on point. Whether or not that means anything, I don't know. Now we need to look at the steps recorded at 8 a.m. 760 steps were recorded at 8 a.m., which is a distance of 1,900 feet. Using the same formula as with the girls, I can only guesstimate that the shallow grave was dug about 15 meters away from Chris's truck. Could have been farther away, but I don't think it was any closer. And that's about 50 feet away from the truck. The bed sheet was the farthest item that was found at the scene. I think it was about 20 meters farther south from where Shanann was buried. But let's see how many steps that would be if he actually walked that sheet out there. 20 meters is about 65 feet, which divided by 2.5 would equal 26 steps. That's not very many. That's not very many at all.
No.
I do think it is possible that he walked this evidence around to dispose of it, because the sheet was caught
I
on
don't
drone
know.
footage and didn't appear to have moved at all from the time that it was seen on the drone until the time that they gathered it into evidence. And this, of course, is based on the drone footage itself as well as photos. But that's obviously just a guess. I'd say the same for the garbage bags, though those could have been blown around a bit more than the sheet could have been. But the rake and the rake handle were likely exactly where they were the entire time, which is exactly where Chris put them or threw them. Either way, now we need to account for these 760 steps. So let's see if we can. When I first started making this video, I didn't think there were enough steps made for Chris to have been the only one doing things at Cervi. But now I'm starting to think that there are more than enough steps to insinuate that he was the only one there, or at least the only one there that morning making all the moves. And as I'm recording this, I can tell you that my opinion changed by the end of this. So stick around and see if yours does too. Okay. Now that we know that steps are, in my opinion, quite drastically different than feet, it almost looks like he has too many steps logged. But again, there was a lot of movement and physical exertion that more than likely accounted for many of those recorded steps. God, you guys, the more I try to figure out the steps versus feet versus meters, the more confused I am getting. And this is where I said earlier that I realized that there was really no way to figure this out. If you have the time, I would suggest you try to figure it out. Let us all know what conclusion you come to. Put it in the comment section below, because I have already spent hours upon hours over the last 2 weeks simply trying to calculate these numbers to fit any sort of pattern.
It doesn't make sense.
Did and
that's
when.
Why.
And I can't. I just can't. And I can't waste any more time on this because I'm already behind now again. What I will say regarding the steps made at Cervi 319 is that there definitely were enough steps recorded, in my opinion, to at least say that Chris was, without a doubt, really physically active during the time he was alone there, before anyone else allegedly arrived. He made a total of 1,241 steps between 6:53 a.m. and 8:29 a.m. My goal for the steps portion of this video was to see if he made enough steps to have physically done everything alone, and in my opinion, the answer is yes. This is because every step is over 2 feet of distance covered. So while Chris recorded 1,170 steps, it was a distance of 2,925 feet. So almost 3,000 feet that was allegedly covered in approximately an hour and a half by Chris. Given the fact that he was only there to observe a leak, that's an awful lot of distance covered, in my opinion. The leak was, according to Troy, right by the stairs to the tanks. This is the photo of it that Chris sent to Cody. You can see it's not a very big leak either. So, of course, I need to question why Chad, Melissa, and Troy all needed to go there. It had been decided on Friday that Chris was going to check Cervi 319 out alone. Cody texted already? Chris that morning to see if he needed any assistance, and Chris Watts said he had it handled. Now, we're going to get more into this, trust, but let's keep on track with the purpose of this video. My next goal...
But the thing is I'm torn between them being alone, or Chris Watts being alone, or with somebody at Cervi 319. But then I thought about too, if Nicole stayed behind and was cleaning up at the house, then she wouldn't have been out at Cervi 319. It would have been somebody else out there, which is others' opinions that it was Jim that was out there. But it's getting confusing.
goal for this analysis video is to see if Chris had enough time to do all the things he said he did alone. Remembering again, Chris was alone at Cervi for a total of 85-ish minutes, about an hour and a half. During that 1 hour and a half time period, he said he took the life of each daughter separately. He then took each daughter up to their separate tanks separately to drop them down through the thief hatches of each tank. So approximately how long would that take? Now this is where it's going to get a little bit intense. If you don't want to hear the details about how Chris took the lives of his girls and how long it likely took for them to pass, then I'm telling you now, that's what we're going to go over, which will then lead into how he disposed of the girls as well. Please don't feel like you have to listen to this part. I will give my conclusion at the end of what I think based off of all of this information, so you can skip past some of the details if it's going to be too graphic or triggering. Although I am trying to be tactful with it. Okay, here we go. Now, Chris said that he used Cece's Steeler's blanket to smother her to death. And Cece didn't appear to have put up much of a struggle. I don't know if this was because she had fallen back asleep or if she was already suffering too much from the alleged first smothering attempt or what, but I think she went easier than Bella. Not that it's any consolation. How long does it take to smother someone to death? In particular, a small child. That is what I wanted to know. And I gotta tell you, I hate researching these things because I always think, oh my God, what if my tech ever gets taken by law enforcement? I would look guilty of all sorts of different crimes. At least I have my channel to help back me up. And you guys will vouch for me too, right? You better.
Yes.
All right, I'm procrastinating. I'm just lightening the mood before I get into this. Okay, so death from suffocation is preceded by 4 stages. Okay, so before someone actually passes, these 4 stages occur. Number 1, increased respiratory rate, tachycardia, arterial hypotension, which is low blood pressure, cyanosis, which is that bluish tint to the skin, meiosis, which is a narrowing of the pupil diameter of the eye. Number 2, convulsive or expiratory dyspnea, which lasts about 1 minute. Number 3, apneic or apparent death. This stage lasts about 1 minute and it's characterized by progressive reduction in the frequency of respiratory acts and meiosis, so the dilation of the pupils, total loss of consciousness, muscle relaxation, and severe bradycardia, which is a slow or a very weak heartbeat. And then the person would go into a deep coma. Number 4 would be terminal or gasping stage, which lasts approximately 1 to 3 minutes and is characterized by continued loss of consciousness, slow and irregular respiratory movements, severe cardiac arrhythmia, cardiac arrest, cessation of breathing, and death. So how quickly does one die? The time in which death occurs is extremely variable, depending on various factors such as age, state of health, state of fitness, and mode of asphyxia.
I think they said it was like 4 minutes.
Were they strangled? Were they smothered? Was a rope tied around their neck? Etc. An elderly person suffering from diabetes, hypertension, and pulmonary emphysema, if subjected to compressive force such as strangulation, resulting in mechanical asphyxia, can lose consciousness and die in less than a minute, as can a child suffering from bronchial asthma. We do know that Cece had asthma as well. So I'm sticking to what I initially thought, which is that Cece went very quickly. And if Chris had already tried to end their lives at the house, I believe that Cece was possibly in a coma. I really don't think she walked up to that truck. I think she was already comatose or very close to death, but I'm not sure. Obviously, I don't know. An adult, fit individual accustomed to prolonged exertion, like a professional athlete or someone who's used to holding their breath, like a swimmer or a scuba diver, subjected to chemical asphyxia, such as that from carbon monoxide inhalation, may on the other hand take several minutes to lose consciousness and die. But in the majority of cases, death occurs in a variable time between approximately 3 and 6 minutes, in which the 4 phases described in the previous paragraph alternate. So the longest This would have taken, according to this article, would have been 6 minutes. Now, Chris said that after he did this, he took Cece up the stairs to the first tank and he dropped her down the hatch, feet first. In order to do this, he had to open the thief hatch. Now, let's talk about this. Chris said that he just opened the lever and bada bing, bada boom, thief hatch opens and closes just as easily. He made it sound like anyone could just go up to an oil tank and pop it open like a can of Pringles. So is it really that easy? And more importantly, is it really that quick? I needed to know this, so I looked it up, and the answer is easy, yes. Quick, that would depend on how you look at it, I suppose. Technically, you're supposed to open the hatch very carefully and wait until the gases have had a chance to release. This is a very important step, but one that Chris Watts seems to not have been too concerned with.
So you had to sit there and turn.
Did he already know the pressure buildup was mild and therefore he didn't have to be that cautious? And if so, how? Troy says in his interview that Cody had opened up the 319 about a week prior. That's kind of interesting. Again, something we'll get into later. Opening a thief hatch and leaving it open can be extremely dangerous, and it has claimed many lives in the oil and gas industry. There is always pressure buildup, or there should be pressure buildup, upon opening the thief hatch of a working oil tank. Now, this is what it looks like when opening a thief hatch during the day. And this is what it looks like under infrared camera at night. Notice how without the infrared cameras, you can't even see the toxic gases coming out. These gases have no odor, so you can't smell them either. What I just showed you was an extreme scenario, but it's hard to know what scenario will unfold when opening a thief hatch, and one should be prepared with the proper equipment to ensure their safety. I find it interesting that Chris had no fear in opening up both thief hatches and hovering over them while forcing his children down into the oil tanks. I mean, I know that he was comfortable with the oil tanks, right? He was a field coordinator, which is one step below the foreman. And Chris would have been fully capable in acting as a foreman if necessary. But still, I don't know. It just raises a red flag to me that this particular site may have been vetted before the morning of August 13th, 2018. Remember, Chris knew he would be going out to Cervi 319 on Friday. The same Friday, I might add, that Chris, Nikki, and Troy McCoy all took off work. Yes, let me say that again. The Friday before the murders, Chris, Nicole Kassinger, and Troy McCoy all took off work. And all had ample time on Friday, Saturday, as well as Sunday to go and check out Cervi 319 off the clock without their work truck GPS. Just saying, it was possible.
Dang.
Let's move on to Bella. Again, this is not going to feel good to hear, but it is what happened, and I'm going off the autopsy report and discovery. We already know that Bella had some injuries that Cece did not have. We also know that Chris said that Bella was the only one who fought back. He explained this in his CBI interview after being convicted, as well as to Sherilyn Cadle in his letters. He also said that Bella didn't fit easily through the thief hatch of the oil tank. Both of these statements made by Chris seem to be reflected in Bella's autopsy report. Unlike Cece, Bella had blunt force trauma of the frenulum and gingival mucosa of the maxilla. What is that? What does that mean? In Bella's case, she had a torn frenulum of the upper lip. The frenulum is a piece of skin that attaches the upper lip to the gum line. This type of injury to a child can indicate abuse, especially when combined with other injuries within the mouth. Bella also had superficial, probable bite wounds of the...
Whoever did this to these girls, I hope you feel what they felt when you... I'm not even going to say it.
Mucosal surface of the tongue. These injuries are consistent with smothering. This is what a torn frenulum looks like. Bella's injury was described as a hole that was at least 1.5 centimeters. The other injuries that were listed on the report were a 13 by 3 centimeter area of vertical excoriations of the left buttocks, a 9 by up to 4 centimeter yellow tan possible abrasion on the left torso, and a 3 by 1.5 centimeter faint yellow tan discoloration on the superior aspect of the left shoulder. So all on the left side. Now these injuries seem to correlate with the statement that Chris made that Bella did not fit as easily through the thief hatch as Cece had. And there are some more things listed within these autopsy reports that I have questions on.
I do too.
I'm going to do a separate analysis video specifically on the autopsy reports at some point. While I believe that Cece passed away very quickly, we know Bella did not. So regarding time it took for the deaths to occur, I'm going to go with 6 minutes for Bella and 2 minutes for Cece, though that is just my opinion for the purpose of this video. So we can round up to 10 minutes for argument's sake, but I really don't think it took longer than 10 minutes, which seems very short, but it's not if you mentally reenact how long just 60 seconds is to take a life by asphyxiation. Now we need to consider Chris taking the girls up to the tanks separately. How long would that take? 135 steps there and back once, 134 steps there and back twice. I clocked that in to be between 10 and 20 minutes, and what I did was I walked around my house until I clocked those steps double. I actually finished it in about 10 minutes, so 20 minutes is being a bit generous. Now let's figure out the disposal of Shanann. Again, the measurements were taken using GPS coordinates, so I'm still going off of approximate measurements using meters and then breaking them down to feet and then breaking the feet down into steps. Shanann was buried not too far away from where Chris parked. Located to the south and east of the wellhead was an area that appeared to have been recently excavated and filled back in. The area appeared to be approximately 8 feet by 14 feet in diameter.
That's a big
And Shanann
hole.
wasn't buried very deep either. Just
2 feet.
8 inches under the surface was where they believed to have discovered her buttocks. I can't, that word. 9 inches in, and they discovered her full remains, reporting that the victim was in the fetal position with her knees pulled up to her chest at the bottom of the grave. Her chest and face primarily were facing down into the ground, while her back was oriented up. Her head was towards the west, while her feet were towards the east. Her left arm was extended to the east alongside of her head. The depth of the grave when the body was removed was approximately 27 inches in depth. So, the site itself was approximately 8 by 14 feet, and the hole was approximately 27 inches deep. Now, there are many ways to try to figure this out, but I had to choose one and I had to stick to it. So I decided to go with the hole itself being 8 feet wide. Now, I looked up how long it would take someone to dig a hole that was 8 feet wide by 27 inches deep, and I'm sure I don't have to tell you that it varies on the size, strength, and physical fitness of the person digging said hole. I'm going off of what we know about Chris Watts physically. Chris is 5'10".
That's a big hole,
and he weighs
man.
200 pounds. He was heavy into fitness at the time of this crime. He was also using Thrive
So we'll
Black
give him
Label,
3 to 4
which
hours.
is a supplemental patch used to enhance performance and energy, as well as losing weight. The ingredients are alleged to be, quote, just vitamins, unquote, but the transparency is severely lacking, in my opinion. There are stimulants of different sources, a blood thinner, and loads of caffeine, none of which have an amount listed. The common side effects reported on other websites, and I say other websites because there are no bad reviews on Lavelle's website, were anxiety, heart palpitations, stomach and GI issues, and tiredness, which likely would be from the withdrawal of these patches. And this isn't just Black Label either. This is DFT also. And you know, this is a whole nother video. So I went through a ton of reviews on several different sites, including the BBB website, and I was shocked to see the claims of people who were saying that they themselves or someone they knew actually ended up in the ER with life-threatening heart and blood pressure complications due to Thrive patches and products. Some of these were even pregnant women who were assured by their seller that the Thrive products were completely safe for use during pregnancy. And this has never been studied, by the way. But this isn't a libel video again, so let me move on before I go on a tangent about it.
I say you're going off. You're going off now.
Commonly wore more than one of these patches at a time. And that would mean that's even double the insane amount of caffeine and stimulant effects coursing through his body. We can only assume that Chris's adrenaline levels were high that morning anyway, but he had also already exerted a lot of energy before even arriving to Cervi 319, if we are to believe that he did all of this himself starting at home that morning. According to the searches, for an average adult male, digging a 2-foot deep hole with a shovel would likely have taken between 30 minutes to an hour. Besides the physical shape of the male, the dirt and soil type also plays a role in how long it would take. Softer soil would be faster to dig through than hard, packed soil. This source goes on to say there are these key factors: that loose, sandy soil will be faster to dig. Now, the area in question was indeed sandy soil. That whole area of Cervi Ranch was sand upon sand on sand. It also says that someone who is used to digging holes would likely be faster at it than someone who's not. And then it also says shovel type. Pipes and the sharper the shovel. Now, Chris had 2 shovels with him. They were used to dig holes out in the field whenever they needed to dig holes. So he was familiar with digging holes. He had 2 different types of shovels. So that certainly is plausible. There was enough time for Chris to dig a 27-inch hole, in my opinion. But hold on. That's the depth. The hole Shanann was in was 27 inches deep, which is about 2 feet 3 inches. But what about the width? Now, we don't have the exact width of the hole, only the size of the quote-unquote disturbed area, which was 8 by 14 feet. So I can only go off of what this looks like. And I was going to go off of 8 feet, but to me, it looks to be between 3 and 4 feet wide. So how long would it take for Chris to dig a 4-foot wide hole?
I'd say,
again, depending on these key factors that we already went over, if the hole were 4 feet wide, it says it would take 2 to 4 hours. 2 to 4 hours.
There's no way he would have done that.
Well, ain't that about a bitch? This info changes things, doesn't it? I mean, even if we cut the time down to the quickest, we're still at an hour and a half just for the hole to be dug, let alone all the other things that took place that morning at Cervi.
No way.
Need I remind you, Chris Watts was only alone at Cervi 319 for an hour and a half. Now, Troy made sure to tell investigators that he held Chris's shovel.
So I grabbed his shovel, walked it over to his pickup, and he said, no, there's still staining on that ground, so we need to cover that up. So he covered it up. We got the truck. I told him I closed the gate. He left, and then I left.
And he said this more than once. He said that he handed Chris his shovel. There were 2 shovels in Chris's work truck, and there was a metal rake that broke at some point out near Shanann's body. Troy seemed, in my opinion, to want to make sure that law enforcement knew that his prints would be found on one of those shovels. Again, that's my opinion.
That's a little sus.
Did Chris Watts have enough time to dig the grave and do all the other things that we covered in this video alone? In my opinion, no. Nope, he didn't. And I am actually shocked to hear that coming out of my mouth because I was so certain that he did all these things himself that morning before I did any of this research.
Said it.
And there's still more to look at. And that would be the texts and the phone calls that Chris was receiving and replying to all morning while he was allegedly doing all of these things. So let's take a look at that. I know this is going to seem redundant, but it's the only way that I feel like I can give perspective in a way that makes sense. All right? So just go with it. At 7 a.m., 410 steps are logged onto Chris's work phone. 7:10 a.m., Chris sends a text to Cody saying, okay, copy. So this is the first block of time that Chris had to do something between 6:53 a.m. and 7:10 a.m. And that total time frame is about 17 minutes. Then Chris Watts has an additional 8 minutes before he takes a photo of his laptop screen at 7:18 a.m. Between 7:18 and 7:40 a.m., Chris has another block of time of about 22 minutes. Then at 7:40 a.m., Chris calls Troy, and he's on the phone for 2 minutes. That call ends at 7:42, and 1 minute later at 7:43 a.m., Chris takes a photo of the leak, and he then proceeds to call Luke Apple.
Then he was apparently supposed to send this to Nicole to prove that he was out at Cervi 319. Why would that matter for her?
For 1 minute and 45 seconds. It's now 7:45 a.m. and Chris texts Cody, fresh. 2 minutes later at 7:47 a.m., Chad calls Chris and they speak for 2 minutes. That call ends at 7:49 a.m. 2 minutes later at 7:51 a.m., Chris texts Cody the photo he took of the leak. Between 7:51 and 8 a.m., Chris Watts has another time block for 8 minutes. 8 a.m., 760 steps are recorded on Chris's work phone. Chris has an additional time block here of 29 minutes before Chad and Melissa arrive to Cervi 319 at 8:29 a.m. That means the total free time that Chris had at Cervi was just 68 minutes.
No way!
I'm gonna let that sink in. Not an hour and a half. 68 minutes.
Keep going. There's more, but a 2 to 4 hour hole or 2 to 4 hours for digging that hole in 68 minutes. There's no way.
85 minutes, 68 minutes. Likely, Chris was walking around with his phone and answering these phone calls and text messages, but I just don't see how he was able to complete all of the things he says he completed alone in just 68 minutes. That's 1 hour and 8 minutes. But hold on a second.
Hold on.
Because I forgot something.
There's more.
2 things that Chris did before Chad and Melissa got there. And one of those things is at 8:25 a.m., Chris made that staged phone call to Shanann. You remember that? He called her and he left a voicemail saying something like, wherever you are, please call me. I'm worried, or who knows what he said. I don't really know. I don't even care. But he called her. He made that staged phone call. And that was at 8:25 a.m. while he was at Cervi 319. And then the second thing I forgot was that at 8:26 a.m., Chris Watts searched for Primrose School.
Already getting him out.
The girls were supposed to be attending that morning. And he found that phone number and he gave them a call and he talked to people and he told them that the girls would not be in attendance anymore. They would not be going to that school anymore. Now, we talked about all this stuff in the last video, but when you really look at it, it's like the more haunting it gets, the more crazy it seems. And when we're thinking about time, the amount of time that Chris had to commit these acts at Cervi 319 by himself, it's just not adding up. So I'm going to actually have to take off minutes. So what did I say it was? 68 minutes that he actually had that was free, that he wasn't like holding his phone with his hands, like either verbally communicating or texting, right? So at 8:25 a.m., he calls Shanann's phone. He leaves a voicemail. I can't imagine that was more than 30 seconds. I'll be putting it up on the screen because as I was editing, I remembered this. And I'm sitting here looking at my notes and I saw it and I realized that I didn't put it in here. So it'll be up on your screen. And then 8:26 a.m., Chris searched for Primrose School to get the phone number. And then he made the phone call to Primrose School. And if you remember from the last video, he actually had like a conversation with them. So that call lasted a total of 2 minutes, 3 minutes? I would think it would be more than 1 minute. So probably that phone call lasted up until Chad and Melissa got there. From 8:26 a.m. to 8:29 a.m. 26, 27, 28, 29. That's 3 minutes. So he was probably just getting off the phone with the Primrose School when Chad and Melissa pulled up. And then there's even more. Okay, so hold on. I'm about to tell you even more, but I had to pop back in here and let you guys know that I forgot 2 things that take off probably another 3 to 3.5 minutes, maybe even 4 minutes. So instead of 68 minutes, we now have only 64 minutes of alone free time at Cervi 319. I am shook. I am shook. I cannot believe this.
I told you
really can't.
guys.
We also have to factor in, according to Troy, Chris had also already dug an 8 or 9 inch hole near the bypass line, which was part of his job, before Troy got there. And Troy said that Chris was the only one with a shovel.
And then when you got to the site, I think you said he had a shovel and he was already digging.
Well, no, the shovel was already, whenever I got to the 319, they'd already dug it up.
Okay.
His shovel was standing right next to the freaking catwalk. So whenever I walked up, his shovel was right up here.
Okay.
And the hole had already been dug.
How big
right
of a
there. That big around.
How deep?
8 inches.
Okay.
Maybe 8, 9 inches.
Did Chad or Melissa have shovels out too?
No, not that I know of, because I think Chris had already done that. Because that was the only shovel that I seen that was out of the pickup on location.
Okay. Did Melissa or Chad have any other tools out?
No, everybody just carries their crescent wrench.
Okay.
That Chad and Melissa didn't even have any tools besides their crescent wrench, which this crescent wrench stuff that he's talking about is another thing we're going to get into later.
90% of our job will focus on a 12-inch crescent wrench.
Okay.
So I always carry that in my back pocket even when I hop out, because we use them to change or turn the wing valves on the wellhead, the inlet valves, the separator, the dump valves, everything. We use the 12-inch for everything.
Okay.
So if you jump out of your truck without the
Why would he
crescent
mention
wrench,
that?
you're useless.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I always give everybody, all the new guys heck whenever they jump out. I was like, you haven't been operating very long, have you?
That's kind of weird.
Forgot your crescent wrench.
So what do we think?
Why are we talking
Now
about
it
crescent
becomes,
wrenches?
if it takes an hour and a half to 2 hours just to dig a hole the size that he dug for Shanann to fit in, then
Same.
68 minutes isn't even enough for that.
No.
So let's look at all of this together, and I will give you guys my conclusion of what I think.
He was
All right,
not
you guys,
alone.
before we get into my conclusion, there is an elephant in the room here that so many people have
Nicole?
addressed regarding whether Chris was the only one there that morning, and that is the flights or floors climbed, or shall I say, the lack thereof. Now, we went through a ton of steps in this video, but there were 27 stairs that led up to the 2 tanks,
And it
and
didn't
yet there are no
register.
flights climbed recorded in Discovery for that time of day.
Did somebody else?
Now, later
do
on that
it?
day, flights were recorded, 11 flights to be exact. So that day, Chris did climb up a flight of stairs 11 times, but they are recorded as being climbed after 12 p.m., which would be the stairs that he was climbing at home, right? After the police came, going up and down the stairs, pretending to look for Shanann and her phone
That
and the
was.
girls. There are no flights climbed before 12 p.m., as you can see in this photo taken from Discovery. Now, this has been pointed out many times on many channels. This photo right here
Dang.
has been used as proof that Chris Watts did not climb any stairs until later in the day.
That shows
They have
what-
claimed that, therefore, this is proof that he couldn't have been the one who took his girls up to the tanks.
somebody else
Now, you
did.
got to be real careful when using the word proof. That word gets tossed around the true crime community so
True.
often,
True,
and
true.
it is so misleading.
I'm
And it ends up
subjected
misleading
to
so many
that.
people, to where in my comment section, I'm having people tell me it was proven or this is proof and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, what is proof? Something that can be proven, right?
True.
Or disproven. This right here is proof of something, yes, but it is not proof that there were no flights climbed by Chris Watts while at Cervi 319. It is proof that Chris Watts' personal phone recorded no steps until after 12 p.m. But this was from his personal phone, which I talked about in the last video. I think it was likely that his personal phone was left in his truck for a majority of the workday. All of the steps we have talked about in this video have been from his work phone, the phone that he was carrying around with him all morning at Cervi, responding to and making texts and phone calls from. On record, in Discovery, we do not have Chris Watts' work phone recording of flights or
Why?
floors climbed. So technically, we can't go on saying that there were no flights climbed because we don't have anything showing either or. It's not here. It wasn't put into Discovery. We only have the flight information from his personal phone, not his work phone. So we don't know if his work phone recorded flights climbed or not. Why it's not included in discovery, one can only assume. But
Still think he
without
wasn't
it,
alone.
we can't say, well, I can't say, I won't say that this is proof of no flights climbed that morning. We also need to take into consideration he's carrying his girls up to the tanks. His hands are quite literally full, so it's possible that his phone wasn't even with him when he climbed those stairs. So in reality, we really wouldn't know, even if the work phone information was in there and said that there was no flights climbed. We still wouldn't know for a fact, meaning it's not proven that he did not do it, if that makes sense.
It does.
Okay, so let's move on to the conclusion.
Oh, yes.
That was all a lot to unpack. I know.
Yes,
I also know that due to all the measurements being approximate, it's hard to know anything for sure. We would need to know exact measurements. And like I said, if any of you smart cookies out there feel like figuring out all of this more accurately, by all means, I pass you the torch. It is yours. Job. What I think is the most important to consider here, though, is the time aspect. Did Chris have enough time to make all the moves he made that morning? In what we can now say was roughly just 68 minutes. My opinion is no.
No.
And where we ran into this timing issue was with the digging of the grave. It likely would have taken Chris at least, and that is being so generous, 60 minutes to not only dig the hole, but to put Shanann in it, cover her up, and then rake the area flat in his attempt to conceal the grave. He also had another hole dug before Chad and Melissa got there, allegedly, and was making phone calls and answering text messages over half of the time he was alone there. It would have taken about 30 minutes to take the girls' lives and bring them up to the tanks separately. And that would be if he didn't go up to open the hatches prior, as a safety concern. I don't know, you guys. Even if it just took 60 minutes for Chris to completely dispose of and cover Shanann, it still likely took 25 to 30 minutes to take the lives of and dispose of the girls. That is the exact amount of time Chris was alone at Cervi.
I said this
Yet when
like,
Chad and Melissa
6 months
arrived,
ago?
They said that Chris didn't look sweaty or tired or out of sorts. He was just digging a hole by the bypass line. My opinion obviously changed. I don't think he had enough time. He definitely was very active while he was there. He was very busy while he was there. More busy than he should have been for the reason he was initially there for. But the time, it doesn't add up.
The time is the biggest thing.
In my opinion, either that hole was pre-dug or he had help. And if I could choose which, I would say my opinion would be that that hole was pre-dug. It was dug either the day before, the night before. It could have even been dug on Friday. But that would take a little bit more research and a little bit more digging for me to really grasp when that hole could have been dug.
He would have to go out. He would have to go out there in his truck, which if his truck turns on, he would see GPS. So there's no GPS that shows that he went out there, pre-dug the hole. Unless he took the Lexus.
I don't think what I initially thought anymore. So what's your opinion? Comment below what you think. The next video will be episode 5 of the timeline. Man. It will continue the timeline of August 13th from where we left off in part 3, episode 4, which was at 9:30 a.m. when Chris leaves Cervi 319 for Cervi 1029. I think I'm going to make separate playlists for my Chris Watts videos because I did not foresee the depth of this case. There was going to be so many parts, so many videos. I didn't foresee each video taking over an hour. In hindsight, I probably should have
labeled each
one part and, never mind the episodes, but I really wanted that timeline to be in one place. And I could have just created a playlist specifically for the timeline, which is probably what I'm going to end up doing now. They're still going to be labeled the same, but I am going to make separate playlists. So there's going to be a separate playlist for all the analysis videos. And then
okay, well, if you guys want to check out her different playlist for the Chris Watts videos, definitely go check her out. Again, the links are in the description. But with that being said, when it comes to the whole dissection of the minutes that he had to dig the hole, to commit the murders, do what he did, there's no way. This man had help. And yet the DA turns his head and all our information, all our evidence falls on deaf ears. That's how lame that is. The proof is there again. NK didn't have an alibi that morning. She pinged in Frederick, Colorado. It shows everything. We have it pretty much shown in a box, ready for you guys to take and bring it to Nicole. And you guys are like, nope, we're not going to look at it. We don't care. Wow. So you're willing to let crime continue, let other families possibly have the same outcome. Again, for those that are watching, please make sure you guys comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, like, and share. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Please take care, be safe, and as always, keep nerding on, and we will see you guys in the next video.